Caitlin Clark was in the house to watch the Indiana Pacers, and the broadcast was showing her like she's Taylor Swift, right? That gives you that star power of her up in the box. But from the support is friendly competition coming up next between the Indiana Fever and the Indiana Pacers. And this story is super intriguing to me. I'm going to really be watching this closely. I mean, you don't really have to watch closely. You just have to wait for the numbers to come out, because the first game that the Fever play, the debut, is 7:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN2 coming up on Tuesday night. That game is on Tuesday night, the same night that not the next game in the Knicks Pacers series will be, but the game after that. So game 5 of the Knicks and Pacers series will be at 8 o'clock on that same night. And that is super, super interesting. The Fever play the Sun, and the Pacers, obviously, and the Knicks will play each other, because not only do you have the Pacers and Fever connection there, the two Indiana teams, to get a gauge of where the interest is in that region, a playoff team in the NBA in the midst of a heated playoff series, and the debut first game of a WNBA team. But on top of that, you got the New York market, which is the biggest market in the country. So theoretically, that NBA game should do pretty big numbers. So I expect that NBA game to win the day, especially given that it's on ESPN versus ESPN2. You don't think these things are significant, but there still is a difference, albeit a small one nowadays, but there still is a difference between being on ESPN1 and ESPN2, hence why they, decide which goes where. But I think we're going to get a good idea and a good gauge of just how big this W wave is, depending on what those Fever numbers are. Because Caitlin Clark, at this moment, as we've talked about here, is probably the biggest star in all of sports. So you're going to get a lot of curiosity in that regard from the casual fan. If you're not a Knicks fan and you're not a Pacers fan, and if you're a Pacers fan, you might be a Fever fan, are you going to tune in? How is that going to work out? What is going to be the difference there? And maybe it takes a minute for all this to take, get a footprint. But if you had told me that the women's national championship game would outrate the men's by 4 million viewers, I would have told you were nuts. If this was not the Knicks involved, perhaps, if this was, a different playoff game, if this had been the Cavs and the Magic from the first round, I think the Fever game would do bigger numbers. But I am super curious to follow that, the numbers afterwards, and see just how close that Fever Sun game is to the Knicks and the Pacers. It's a little bit of a game within the game and a friendly competition, if you will.